Hi, it's Gene, retired in Mexico, and I've been meaning to do this video for a while. I had a subscriber or viewer, I'm not sure which, but Josephine Fox. She wrote me a really nice comment here, and I've been thinking about it ever since. So, Josephine, sorry for the delay. I think she wrote this in December, but she wrote, "Do you have?" Oh, let me get the complete one. This is the edited one. Here we go. She wrote, "Do you have any videos talking about your opinion on either the production styles of modern electronic music or the post ironic lyrical styles of modern pop songs influenced by the internet?" One of the things I always am interested in is the intersection of younger and older perspectives on these topics, which got my attention. Younger folks are viewing these songs through the lens of growing up in the 2000s, specifically with an interest in the overinflated, self-absorbed, and commonly self-harming aesthetic of 2000s pop and rock. Personally, I agree that party songs sound pedestrian in content. Maybe she means context, I'm not sure, but to a degree, that's the point. Typically, not idolizing the lyrics themselves, but the ironic content of shallow lyricism. This was in response to Charlie XCX's song 360. She writes, "I'm very interested in what you have to say about your perspective as someone who wasn't born in the last 30 years." Super nice. And I wrote her back and told her I would think about that. So I've got some comments to make on that. I think that it's an interesting subject, and these are just my opinions. But as you saw from the thumbnail here, I've come up with four things that I think are different about music today. And I don't know that any of them are criticisms, but they have a good part and a bad part. So we'll start with the one that might be the closest to well, it's not really criticism. It's just that I feel a little bit of compassion for this. Number one thing that's different about music today in the 21st century is we are in a visual society. Before, songs were used in movies, commercials, Netflix series. People used their ears more than their eyes, except looking at the album art and going to concerts if you could afford it. To see a live performance on film or video, one went to the cinema. Now we have biopics rather than documentaries. Oh, and I want to talk about this too. Just to prove that it's kind of a visual society, people say, "Oh, that song is so iconic." No, it's not. A song cannot be iconic. Okay, and I realize I'm playing grammar police with me here, but hang on. Let me tell you this. What this is, the definition of the word icon, which I looked up. First one is a painting of Jesus Christ or another holy figure, typically in a traditional style on wood, venerated and used as an aid to devotion in the Byzantine and other Eastern churches. Second definition, a person or thing regarded as a representative symbol or as worthy of veneration. So, and then there's another one about computers, which is images. But here's some synonyms: image, idol, portrait, likeness, representation, star, superstar, hero, heroine, megastar, celebrity. So, what am I getting at here? A band is iconic, a video is iconic. I don't think a concert can be unless it's recorded. But a song is auditory. It's not iconic. You know what it is? It's epic. So just, yeah, I majored in English. Sorry, but and people always say, "Well, the language is changing." Well, it does change. It does change, but I think this one's going to stay wrong for a while. It's a terrible misuse of the English language. Bands, posters, videos, that's iconic. Music is epic. And I'm just trying to make the point that it's such a visual society that Kate Bush can release a song and it blows up 40 years later because it was used in Stranger Things. A lot of songs are used in car commercials or different kinds of ads. Now, Bob Dylan famously defended this. He said, "How many people heard of Buddy Holly till his music was used in commercials?" And his point was well taken. He's like, hey, whatever gets the music out there to the people, that's good. Um, but, I will say that in the auditory age, we did have to use our imaginations a lot. People still use their imaginations today. I'm just saying that maybe they use their imagination in other ways, in animation, creating games. There's as much imagination today as ever, writing and painting. But I'm not sure that listening to music is quite as imaginatory as it once was. All right, number two. I think people are a little more defensive about their taste. So here's my example. And again, these are just opinions and I'm generalizing, but let's say you told a deadhead that you didn't like the Grateful Dead. This is probably what they would have said back in the 60s or 70s, because I remember hearing this as a little boy. Different strokes for different folks, man. Yeah, people used to say that. Now, with the fanboy and fangirl online communities where you can hide behind your keyboard and so forth, people kind of get their underwear in a bunch. There were some Swifties that threatened to burn down the house of a pitchfork critic. Yeah, I'm generalizing, but I think that people were a little less defensive in the past. That's my sense. There are many, many things that are improved, but fan communities can have a meanness. On this channel, it just depends on the artist. So I really like the fan communities of Godspeed You Black Emperor and Sabaton and some other ones. But then, when I ran into the Love Bites crowd or the Greta Van Fleet crowd or even the Ren crowd a um, little bit different temperament. Not that they were rude, but you could just feel it. You could just feel it. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think people just didn't care what you liked or didn't like. All right, number three, no scenes, no genres. Yes, I know there are. People argue with me. They go, what about this? What about that? I said, well, I would say they're more subgenres today. So, once upon a time, you had classical, jazz, country, blues, R&B, and show tunes. And then in my lifetime, I saw the rise of, not rock. That was a little before my time. I was born after Chuck Berry and all that stuff. But then I was right there for punk, disco, prog rock, or art rock, whatever you want to call it, Americana, electronica, techno, Britpop, and so forth. And then it just kind of stopped, kind of in the late 90s. You had grunge, kind of techno, rave, you had all that. And then as we entered the 21st century, less so. My friend once said that everyone is now a genre of one. And that makes sense to me because if you think about artists like Andrew Bird or Julia Holter or Sufjan Stevens or how about Bjork, these people don't sound like anybody else. And I think that's great. I think that's good. But then it kind of ties back to the second point I made, that if you don't have genres, you kind of maybe have fanboys and fangirls. Makes sense. I think it's all good. I would suggest that today you have to kind of go into that artist's inner world. So you take an artist like Bjork that I adore. You got to go into Bjork's world. She's not necessarily what you would call accessible. Used to be everybody copied everybody, right? There were a million garage bands, a million disco bands, a million rap acts. And then all of a sudden now you've got people that are trying to make unique music. I think it's interesting and I like it just as much. It's just an observation. This one's not any kind of criticism at all. It's just the way I see things. And then my fourth one's going to take a little time to explain. I hope you'll hang with me on this because I think it's really interesting. I am totally obsessed and immersed in the philosophy of Byung-Chul Han. He's a 66-year-old Korean German philosopher and an author who theorizes that we are in the achievement society. And I'm reading this because there's a lot to do. In his book, The Burnout Society, which I haven't read, but I've listened to podcasts about it and watched a bunch of videos about it, he suggests that in the past we were in a disciplinary society. Okay, in fact, for centuries or millennia, where people were told what they should or shouldn't be doing. People were either good citizens or rebels. It was a time of rules, laws, police, 10 commandments. Think about clashes with the police in the 1960s, demonstrations, riots, Kent State, protests, dogs, hoses, hippies putting flowers in rifles, Vietnam. And, I'm adding my own interpretation here. It's not necessarily what Hahn wrote, but you get the idea. And Hahn calls this negative power. Now, don't misunderstand his word negative, but in a state of authority, law and police, the word oppression is used, right? You're oppressed. It's the man, right? People used to always talk about the man. Now, people who couldn't conform to this system were called madmen and criminals, common words I grew up with. But by contrast, he says we're now in an era of positive power. Now there is no authority but yourself. You can do whatever you want. Society is more permissive. Nike encapsulated this with their slogan, just do it. If you're not a millionaire today, it's your own fault. No one's being oppressed in liberal Western societies, is again generalizing, but rather than oppression, we now see depression. People who can't conform in this society are called depressives and losers, not madmen or criminals. So for me, this explains some things that I didn't understand for a long time, such as cutting. I never knew anyone who cut themselves in my youth, and when I first heard of it, I was like, "WTF?" Like, I did not understand why someone would cut themselves. And I've talked to people who say, "Yeah, I knew a couple people back in the day, but now it's not so unusual. But back then, that would have been considered very disturbing and bizarre." There's a rise in suicides. They're much more prevalent today, and I suppose one could argue that mass shootings are just suicide turned inside out. Mass shootings were rare in my school days. In fact, Hahn also theorizes that the world almost necessitates that we be narcissists, that it's hard not to be one. And I prefer the term self absorbed. I mean, if you're studying for your SAT test and then shopping colleges and putting in applications for colleges and then studying with your friends and selecting a major, or if you're moving into an apartment or a dorm, you're very self absorbed. I wouldn't call it narcissistic, but this can become a lifetime of self preoccupation. Everyone's an achievement project, is what he says. So, anyway, I think it's crept into lyrics, is my point. Now, Hahn would say it's because it's a product of the achievement society. It's not because narcissists are having narcissistic babies. Now, and I mention it again because it's entered into the lyrics. And there were always artists like the Velvet Underground who sang about drug use and sadomasochism in the mid 60s. And you had rap artists who were painting bleak inner city pictures in the 80s, to provide a couple examples. We could even point to, I was thinking of Marvin Gaye or Stevie Wonder or Gil Scott Heron, who did The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, who were pushing the lyrical envelope. So, again, I'm not saying there weren't exceptions. But on the other hand, they tended to be more societal statements. And this is me, this is my thinking here. I just think it was more societal. And today, the pronouns are more likely to change from we to I. That's a generalization, but I hear a lot more songs that sound like entries from a diary. And people relate to many of these songs as they describe thoughts and feelings. I hear more songs about personal issues and less about societal issues, but there's always exceptions. Of course, we did Chat Pile on this channel. The song Why is about homelessness. So it's not like everything is flipped. Okay? So there were dark subject matters in the past, and there's light subject matters today. But I think there is a movement that's crept into the lyrics, um, which is mostly a good thing, but sometimes the singer sounds a little narcissistic, right? So I hear a little bit more me, and less lyrics like the recently deceased singer Jesse Colin Young, who died in the last month. He wrote for the Young Bloods, "Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now." Sounds a tad naive, right? As we say here in Bonita, Mexico. Buen dia. Let me know what you think.